So now what we're going to do is actually make our search form work. So before we actually implement that part, we are going to have this search form and this search form actually come from the exact same form. So if we ever need to change it, we can change it in one place. And actually, if we ever need to reuse it, we can reuse it from one place. And even further, if we need to update the button or anything like that, it will match the styling all across the board. So to do this, we're going to go ahead and jump into our navbar.html where that main form is. I'm going to go ahead and cut that out. And inside of my search folder here, I'm going to do snippets. And inside of that, we will do search-form.html. Paste this in. So here is our now search form. So back into our navbar, we have to include it. So we'll do include, and this is search snippets and search form.html. That's it. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this, save my search form, make sure that I'm still getting it. Oops, I have a spelling error. This should say search form. There we go. Save that, refresh, and now we've got the same search form is still coming up. So back in our view, I'm going to do that same thing for this input. All we did was an input there and put the search form in there as well. Refresh and cool. So it is looking, it looks a lot better, but it's still not great because of how these inputs are. In fact, I want to get rid of this spacing here and just make it one seamless sort of looking form, right? I want it to be an input group. That's what it is in Bootstrap. So if we jump into Sublime Text into our now search form, I can change this to be exactly what I want it to be. First thing I need to do is get rid of this margin right. I no longer need that because I'm going to be having these nice and flush. So I got rid of that margin right, and now they are fairly flush. The next thing I want to do is put this button into a span class of input group btn and just wrap that button in there just like that. And we also we can leave it like this for just a moment. The next thing is for this entire area, the entire input and button, we're going to give it a class of input group. This is important, and it covers the button, the span, all of that stuff, as well as the input. And we close off that div, tag things in a little bit. That tab did not do well. Okay, nice and clean there. There we go. Okay, so now that we've got this, the next thing I need to do is get rid of this form-inline and just keep it as form. The reason I don't need form inline is because of how this input group works. I refresh in here, and now it's looking a lot better. If I break it down, let's break it all the way down. This search input is looking a little different. We'll take a look at that in just a moment. And then I'll open this up and same thing. This is also looking just a little bit wrong. So let's go ahead and get rid of this portion of it, the spacing. And now that I got rid of those things, it's back to what it was. Okay, so getting rid of the margin top and bottom, as well as the margin top and bottom on small, that actually changes the way this form is laid out. That's why it looks like this. So that's going from the default down to something we want. So that's just the design of it. That's how it looks. The next portion is actually making this form function. So the method is get. That is the default method anyway, so you don't actually have to write method in this case. And then the action, well, this is where that form is going to go. And that is to our URL. What is the URL? We have to actually ask that question. We have this search product view with a name of list. So this probably should be like search query, something like that. So let's call it query. And then we are going to go into our main configuration URLs, and we see search, namespace of search. So in here, what does that mean? It means search and query. We save that, refresh in here. And if I do a search now for like t-shirt and hit search, well, it doesn't look like I got anything. That's because our input needs to be named. And more specifically, we have to call it name of Q. we give it this name of Q so that our search query actually comes through. Call it search, hit enter. Let's make sure we saved everything and refresh, and we'll call it shirt. Hit search, and what do you know? There's the query there, and it's coming through. One thing that's still not showing up is the persistence of the query on wherever you're looking for. So if you search up there, that should also work, and it does. I want to actually show what that's going to be. So that's actually really easy to do. We can just do value equals to request.get.q. And of course, we want to put that in curly brackets. In this case, I'm going to leave it as request.get.q specifically because it's not just in the search view itself, but it's also in the nav bar. So if I search shirt now, it stays there, right? And if I search t-shirt, or I want a t-shirt, stuff like that, right? It's actually changing it. And a big part of the reason why this is not coming through is because that's not the name of it. T-shirt, T-shirt is the name of it, and that's why that's how it's going to show up. So that's another thing to consider, but that is pretty much it for getting this search form working. If you have any questions on what we did here, please let us know. Otherwise, let's keep going.